Hi there. Hey.
Hi there.
How are you? Hi there, Jasper. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome. You're back.
It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, we have a new overlay. You're the first one with our new graphics and everything.
Oh,
so
fancy.
Perfect.
Yeah, extra fancy just for you.
Nice. I put also my fancy clothes on just for you guys.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are super excited to have Jasper on. Can you give us, what is your like official title? What do you tell people when they say, what do you do, Jasper?
That's a good question. Some people call me a mushroom wizard or a mushroom madman. I like mushroom madman.
That's pretty good.
But I create alternative learning experiences, and what I'm calling myself a sacred mycology teacher. So I teach mycology and mushroom cultivation to people from all over the world.
Nice. So how we found Jasper to begin with is I follow his page, Fungi Academy. Him and his partner run it, and it's an insanely awesome and visual, like very visually pretty page. But beyond that, there's a lot of knowledge that's kind of stuffed into each one of their posts, which I really enjoy. And I've been following them for a while. I hit him up and it's like, hey, we've been talking about psychedelics a lot on our podcast. Would you like to come over and talk about them with us? And he obliged. So this is where we're at, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in today. It's going to be really awesome stream with a ton of questions. So let's talk about mushrooms and your personal journey into why you even started studying mushrooms, taking them, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us about yourself, Jasper.
Cool. So I'm from the Netherlands, and legislation in the Netherlands is quite different. When I turned 18, I was legally allowed to go to a store, a smart shop, like we call it, and buy mushrooms, magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, however you want to call them. And at first, I had like a very small experience with a couple of friends that actually offered it to me. And I had like a great day. And I was like, whoa, this is fantastic. I want to experiment more with this. And next thing you know, I became like this quasi shaman, like buying like shit tons of mushrooms from the store and like feeding to all my friends, like, you got to try this. This is so good. So that's what started happening. And it was really interesting because since there was not this stigmatization and we didn't think we were doing something wrong, I actually spent a lot of time like just walking around the city, like hanging around with parks. Actually not the best settings if you look at it from all the experience that I have now, but I was having fun and we were not getting paranoid. I remember actually one time my friend in a supermarket, because we somehow like going to supermarkets because all the colors and the lights are so bright, that my friend just started like cracking up because he was looking at like, I think it was dishwashing soap and like high on mushrooms in a supermarket. Nice. And we just all started cracking up. And like this lady was like, are you guys all right? I was like, yeah, we just had some mushrooms. And it was like, wow. So for us, that was like completely normal. And how I started cultivating, I was like, they're not super cheap to consistently buy yourself. So like I bought these grow kits, basically, and you can buy like oyster mushroom grow kits or lion's mane mushroom grow kits everywhere in the world. But in the Netherlands, you can also buy sacred mushrooms, magic mushroom grow kits. So like I kept buying these for like 25 euros and was growing my own mushrooms. And I was already like doing some research on like how to go through the whole process, but I was living in like this really dirty student dorm. And I was like, this might not be the best place to start cultivating mushrooms. And like after like a couple of big life changes, I started traveling the world, just like trying to find myself a little bit more. And mushrooms were always there, but not like super on the high ground until like, I'd say like 4 years ago, I started picking it up again, but I was traveling. So it was really hard to cultivate mushrooms, but I was doing a lot of research and I was reading like all the books on like medicinal mushrooms, psychedelic journey work, mushroom cultivation. And then eventually I got to Guatemala, and the Fungi Academy, as it was in a different form, but like I heard of the Fungi Academy in Mexico, in Oaxaca, Mexico, actually in San Mateo, which is like this hub of the sacred mushroom. This is where R. Gordon Watson went to find the Mazatec people and eventually had a connection with Maria Sabina. That's all in that same area. And the mountains of Oaxaca are actually the most biodiverse place in the world regarding fungi biodiversity. And that's where I learned the Fungi Academy. And then I arrived here on Lake Atitlán in Guatemala. And I got there. I was like, oh, it's like completely different from what it is now. But I had this really deep calling from within, like, I'm going to be here for a long time. And this is before I met my business partner, Oliver. And there's actually like only one person in a building that was kind of falling apart. It was actually, we had a mold issue. There was black mold growing in the foundation, which is kind of ironic for a Fungi Academy. But we moved eventually and we started like redoing a lot of the structures and foundations of Fungi Academy to bring it to where it is right now. And yeah, that's my journey with mushrooms, basically. And I teach people how to grow mushrooms.
I really enjoyed hearing about how you ended up in Argentina to begin with.
Guatemala.
I'm sorry, Guatemala. But anyways, yeah, tell us about how you ended up where you are and your original plans.
Oh, wow. So my original plans, I'm really into alternative ways of traveling. After traveling the world for like 4 or 5 years. So I like started off flying from the Netherlands to Southeast Asia. And then I traveled around Southeast Asia, mainly by bus. And I was running out of money. And like, I heard you can do this working holiday thing in Australia. So just with no money, I decided to go to Australia. And I didn't have money to go by bus. And Australia is fucking massive. So I was kind of forced to start hitchhiking. And I was like, whoa, hitchhiking is awesome. You meet all these crazy people. You have all these awesome adventures. And that really like, tickled the urge to do more alternative ways of traveling. So I started walking and sailing and cycling. And my goal on this journey, on this trip specifically, I flew from Germany to Seattle. And my plan was to go from Seattle all the way down to at least Ecuador without flying and mainly with hitchhiking and sailing. So I spent some time hitchhiking the west coast of the United States. And I sailed from like LA to around Baja California to La Paz. And like, I was just like hitchhiking my way down. During the way, my bank card got eaten by a pig.
Wait,
so
what?
Like,
how did you get eaten by a pig?
Okay, so this is actually funny because somebody in the United States gave me a magic mushroom chocolate that I was just like carrying around for the right moment. And I was couch surfing in, I forget the name of the place, somewhere in Mexico. But these two sisters, they had a pet pig. And they told me, do not leave any of your food on the ground because the pig will eat it. So I didn't leave any of my food on the ground, but I forgot about this magic mushroom chocolate that was in my little bag. And it was right next to my bank card and my passport. But I took my passport out for some reason. And then like we're having dinner and I just heard like this noise coming from the room that I was staying in. As suddenly it just connected. And like I see this pig just chewing on my bag. I was like, oh shit. And it didn't get through it, so it didn't eat the magic mushroom chocolate, but my bank card was just like broken in half.
Oh no.
And yeah, that's how it happened.
I really thought the pig was going to eat the magic mushrooms. I thought this was going to go a whole other way, and you were going to have to sue the pig through its first mushroom trip.
I mean, at least you left it at. So there's at least that.
There was at least that. Yeah, I did enjoy it in the end. Although it was kind of smudged, it was still good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's dive into the psychedelic mushroom topic. I know a lot of people start talking about microdosing on my posts. So before we get into microdosing, can you talk to us about the difference between macrodosing, microdosing, and the pros and cons of either one, and kind of just tell us the differences?
I think it's really important to note at first that like all experiences with psychedelics is completely relative. Like if I would take, for example, 3 grams of dried mushrooms and you would take 3 grams of dried mushrooms, even if they're the same mushrooms, you might have a completely different experience, even if we're sitting in the same room at the same time. And the main idea of the difference between how I see like microdosing and macrodosing. And it's funny because a lot of people in this area of the world, they say they're microdosing and they're saying like, yeah, I only take half a gram. And it's like, well, I wouldn't say that's microdosing. And like how some people classify it as sub-perceptual, but that's an interesting statement because I'm not, when I microdose, I don't feel like, I don't see patterns. I don't become like in the psychedelic state, but I definitely perceive a difference in my consciousness, and it's mainly my alertness. I feel it's like I'm cognitively enhanced, so I feel my memories are more accessible, and I just have a better time vocalizing what I want to say, and it's just easier to be happy and myself. So I'm like definitely noticing that. So it's not 100% sub-perceptual, but the idea of a microdose is that you do not want to sit in a tram and like look in your hand and like see patterns coming up, because you might have to go, might want to microdose when you go to work, or you might want to microdose in any normal situation where you want to be like centered and focused. And when you take a macrodose, which is, I'd say anywhere between 1 gram and like 5 grams is what generally the dose is, that is when you start getting these psychedelic archetypes of what people call the come up. So you might feel like a little strange in your stomach, and you might get visions. Your vision might change, and often this comes in the right set and setting, and this is really important. The right mindset and the mind setting around you, you get a lot of like clarity. And for me, mushrooms are very introspective. So like mushrooms, like what people call the spirit of the mushrooms, los niños santos, the holy children, they show me where I can improve on in my life and how I can grow in my life and what are the negative patterns that I can take away. And this cannot always be pleasant, right? Because you're being shown your own shadow. But this is so constructive in growing as a person to become what some people can call the person you're destined to be.
So again, can you repeat the dosages, like between the difference between macro and micro? Because a lot of people just want to know, how do I know it's a proper microdose versus a macrodose?
I'd say a microdose, you should not feel like the come up. You should not. I'd say like start with microdosing, start as low as possible. And we've had a student who was a Vipassana meditator, and I gave him a dose that's 0.05 grams. So it's like nothing. That's like half of what I take as a microdose. And he was still feeling these effects. So these dosages are all different for everybody. And I'd say start with like a dose like this, like 0.05 grams, and see how far up you can go with like, and you always need to experiment on days that you don't have to like go to work and sit in an office all day, you know, but like see where your boundary is and what's your perfect dose, because we're all different humans and we all have different body weights, and the medicine all like changes like significantly on each individual. And what I see, like, it's better to go lower than higher. I was like, when I started microdosing, I was like, yeah, I can have 0.2 grams. And then it was actually still kind of fine. But when I had a bad day, that was just amplified. And when I had a good day, that was also incredibly amplified. And right now I feel less is more. Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So it just like, you felt like it would just, is it the same sort of thing with microdosing that it tends to just amplify whatever emotions that you're having? Or is it now, once you've settled into a dosage that fits you, it does the opposite, like it just improves everything?
Yeah, more so the latter. I feel like it improves everything. And when you are in the high spectrum of a microdose, it might also amplify the bad feelings and the bad like flow.
That makes a lot of sense. It feels like, I remember one of my favorite TV shows is Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. And Hamilton Morris. Yeah. And when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, I don't know what podcast it was. And he mentioned that like the worst thing that could happen in a trip is that you die. But then in reality, you've now gone through death. And like, you're now not afraid of death. like you faced your biggest fear within your mind, and now you can go throughout life without doing that. And I think that's I don't know why I said that. Honestly, I don't know where I was going to connect that. I had a connection in my brain and I don't know where it went. It's gone now.
Yeah. So
I think you're absolutely right, though.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ego death is kind of a concept that everybody may or may not even know exactly what it is, but it's something that pops up every time you talk about psychedelics. It's like, well, the worst thing that can happen, or the best thing that can happen to you, is ego death. Yeah. What does that actually mean?
It's like ego death is kind of like it became a meme, just like the 5 dried grams of mushrooms in the silent darkness, you know. And I think it's, again, this really subjective experience, because I've experienced different layers of ego death, where I've had ego death on 500 micrograms of LSD, where I completely lost all connection with the essence, with the ego that was Jasper. I was just like so deep connected to the universe that I felt one with the universe. And I was one with the universe for an amount of time that I was in a completely different dimension. And then when I came back to my body after my body was calling me because I needed to pee, and I was laying in my bed, and there was still some sort of that connection. It's like, don't pee in your bed, just like get out of this. But I woke up and I put my headphones off and I looked up around my room, and I didn't know where I was. I looked at my hands, like what I didn't even know what I was. And this rippled off for like a minute or so. So that's definitely a version of ego death that can happen, where you just lose reality of like who your essence as a person is, because your soul, your consciousness is one with what some people see as God, or like the whole collective consciousness, what Rupert Sheldrake calls the morphogenic fields, which is the consciousness of like the whole universe. And then there's also an ego death where, and this is more in the shamanic tradition, where you are being taken away from your ego by either a spirit or like the guider of the medicine. Can be ayahuasca, can be mushrooms, can actually be any psychedelic. And this is what I've never experienced that this ego disconnection of the death with mushrooms, but I've experienced this with like LSD. But I've experienced another version of ego death where I was not in control of my ego anymore, and I was just taken on a journey by what felt like an outward spirit to show like, again, where I needed to improve, what I was like. And it's again super amplified, right? And like you might be like a little bit self-conscious about like this little bit, but like that can be so amplified that you don't have control over your own reality. And that's how some people perceive ego death in a way.
So it's almost like disassociating yourself from your physical being, and it's almost like looking at it at an outside perspective, and therefore you're not defined by your ego anymore. You're kind of just like outside looking in. It's interesting.
I see this as like psychedelics in general. They're like this seeing your own life as a third person perspective. And like I've just met you, but for me, it's really easy, for example, to see it's like, oh, this person is communicating violently, or this person is like, I don't know, it's like, oh, it doesn't look like their body is really healthy right now. But like, it's so hard to reflect these things on yourself. And for me, psychedelics are just this mirror that can show you your life as you're looking at yourself from somebody else's perspective.
It's really helpful in trying to self-help and self-assess. Really cool. Yeah.
I mean, from what I've always learned from psychedelics, or I remember like my first friend that ever said anything about psychedelics, they talked a lot about how much you have to respect them and like think about them in like a way of, I don't know, about guaranteeing a good trip, or about having a better trip is like setting your intentions beforehand and like respecting them as a medicine instead of something you're doing to like party or something along those lines. Is there anything that you have like learned to help guarantee, or not necessarily guarantee, but like help have a better trip of that sort?
I think that's a really good question. And I think this is like the zeitgeist, the time ghost of right now. It's like, how can we as a collective work consciously with this medicine, right? Because to me, it's been a medicine. I've come over depression and many other like psychological illnesses with the help of these medicines. And to an extent, this like by the therapeutic like session, because it's like this drive for it to become legal, they're also like, yeah, you have to be really careful. You have to do this and this. And to an extent, right? Because like I've started using it when I was not intentional at all, and I was absolutely fine. I've never experienced what I more so like to call a challenging experience so much. And this is from the one lesson I got really early on, and that's let go. So if you, like what some people used to say in the 60s and 70s, if you see the dragon, jump into its fucking mouth. Don't be afraid. Don't try to run. Just like accept whatever is going to come over you. And if I see a lot of people have struggles when they're trying to fight like something that the medicine is showing them.
Interesting.
And I would like to mention two things that like are really important, and it's set and setting. So set is, when we talk about set, we talk about the mindset of the individual wanting to experiment with psychedelics. So like some people, like, for example, I love marijuana, and like, unfortunately it was like an escape drug for me, right? I had a shitty day, I'd smoke some weed and I feel better. And for a lot of people, alcohol functions in the same way. But if you use psychedelic medicine in the same way, it can give you a very challenging experience. So you want to be in a stable, intentional mindset. And then setting is also really important. And like I said, like I was fine walking around the city and going into supermarkets, but there's definitely generally some ideas that like it's better to have the setting of your own house where you feel comfortable, where there's like nice pillows you can maybe hug if you feel bad, or like where there's like a safety of where you feel safe. I think that's the most important thing. If you feel safe, it's so much better to have a pleasant experience and journey than in a place where you potentially can feel unsafe.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually commented and asked a question on Instagram. She said, is there advice that you would give to somebody who's only really had bad trips? Because she said she's at this point given up trying due to the nature of her trips. How would you kind of try and help somebody out that in general kind of goes down that path?
Like, I think journaling is a really powerful tool for this. And like, I would like to move away from this concept of bad trips, because I feel even if I have a challenging experience, there's so much that I've learned from in the end. And I hope your friend also has learned a lot from these challenging experiences. And that's also what current studies are suggesting, that like even the people that have a challenging experience will eventually have like a lot of benefits from this. And how to move forward is like seeing what is the key concept that keeps coming back up, that creates this challenging experience. And I feel like we as humans, we like to like expect things. It's like, okay, I have this expectation before jumping in. And I feel it might be really beneficial to release all expectations, especially if you have had challenging journeys before. It's like, I'm an open book. And this is like a little bit of a contradictionary thing that I've personally have experienced. I'm definitely not trying to like emphasize like, yeah, this is what you have to do. For me personally, the most challenging experiences that I've had is when I took a dose that was not like, was like on the verge of like a really high dose and like a casual dose, which I would, for example, can take at a party where I can still converse and not having this life-changing experience. But anywhere just in between, where you don't really like jump over the fence and get into the Garden of Eden, that has like brought me more challenging experiences, because you're kind of in limbo. And this is different for everybody. And like, I'm definitely not saying if you only had challenging experiences, take more. But like, this is like, if you do take more, you don't have a choice. You have to let go, because there's no other way. But then again, this has like, I completely suggest doing this with somebody that you trust, that is not on the medicine at this point, that you feel secure with, that can support you through this process. And that, like, if you're witnessed in your process, to me, that's been really profound in my own growth. Because it makes you, again, this feels in this form of setting, right? Where you feel more secure when there's somebody around you that you love and trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Megan in the past has described, reshaping your neural network into this like scenario where you're pretty much laying down like a fresh sheet of snow down a hill that's already got its inlaid grooves. Can you go further into that concept and like kind of explain how mushrooms work on the brain and like what it does and why people get over things like depression and PTSD?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And like, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I've known like as much as what I've read on the internet and maybe a conversation that I have with some people that I've studied this. But from my understanding, the newest part of the brain, which is called something cortex, the name shoots me away, and this is why I'm not a scientist, because the hard names.
Limbic cortex, maybe.
Possibly. Anyhow, this is like, I see it as the intersection point of our brain. This is where our brain is collecting all the data from like the parts that like perceive our vision and our hearing and like our sense of touch, and all information goes through this. And we in the modern society get so like exposed by all these impulses of like constant entertainment on like screens, or like if you live in a city, constant car noises or like constant noise, and this can overload this part of the brain. And when they put some people in functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, which is basically a big brain scan machine with like magnetic waves, they expected a lot of explosion to happen within the brain. But actually this part of the brain that's like that intersection got turned off when exposed to psychedelics. And because the brain is really plastic, so it can not like we have a plastic brain, but it's really good at adapting and really malleable. It needs to find different ways of communicating. And this is why a lot of people perceive to see music under the influence of a psychedelic, because the part that actually like processes like your perception of sound and your perception of vision are actually directly communicating without this mediator that you have in your normal consciousness. And that is what is my understanding of like how psychedelics work on the brain. And this mode of neuroplasticity also generates this concept in your brain that also these patterns. And I'm using another metaphor here, and I like the metaphor of the road. If you walk a road a lot, like suddenly, like you have this elephant path, for example, in a bush. But then a lot of people start walking this, and maybe somebody's like, well, maybe we put some rocks there, so we don't always have to cut it with a machete. And then more like people start walking on it, and then at one point cars start driving over it. And you start having these like bigger roads, and then it can go in the opposite way as well. If you have a road that nobody ever uses, it starts deteriorating. And I see like our neural pathways in a very similar manner, that if you do something a lot, like, and I believe you both are musicians, right? So it's a little bit like muscle memory, where you like practice the same chord progression and suddenly it's like in there, and that's the same function. But when like experiencing psychedelics, these roads are like a lot easier to break down and to build than they are in the normal state of consciousness. And I've experienced this myself, where like when I was learning how to juggle, I was living like a beach bum in Australia, and I was taking lots of LSD, and I was learning a lot faster. And this is what some other people also perceive, that under the influence of psychedelics, when you're practicing anything that it has to do with like muscle memory, you see progress happen a lot faster than you would normally do. And like I see like somebody that has PTSD or depression, that's like a negative road that's just really big, that's really easy to travel for all these neurons and these neurotransmitters to go through. But then the psychedelic can actually block off that road. It's like, no, this is not the road I want to walk anymore. And it starts creating a new path. And it gives you this way of looking like, hey, there's a way out of this habitual pattern that is destructive to my person.
That's really interesting. So it's really, I feel like I constantly, the more introspective I get, or the more, or at least when I started taking psychedelics, it opened me up to that like idea of we're all connected. And then once that happened, it's like these metaphors in the same manner of like our brain patterns working in the same way that roads do, or things like that. It seems like our cells mirror what like the earth is. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's like, it's the same sort of thing that reminds me of that. So another thing that I've also experienced in psychedelic issues is that, or when I take psychedelics, is tend to have stomach problems in any sort of manner. And I think that usually comes from like the confusion of, do I eat food before? How do you consume them? Are you supposed to, like, is tea, do you put them on like toast? Like, what is when you're like talking through someone like their first time, what is your recommendation for the like best way to experience them or to consume them?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. I personally have experienced this a lot in my early years of experimenting with psychedelics. I always had stomach issues. And then at one point, somebody's like, just don't eat the day that you are going to be consuming any psychedelic. And so I did. I didn't have breakfast. I didn't have lunch. I had my experience and it didn't have stomach issues. And if you look a little bit like on energy division and like our body and like the stomach and like the gut and everything that is controlling like the digestive process takes up a lot of our energy, and then it's our brain. And I've had like one experience that made this really clear to me. I had a really like a challenging LSD experience, and like again stomach issues, lots of stomach issues. And then like a couple hours in, I had to poop and I released all that stuff, and afterwards it's like I felt like all the power going back to my brain and being able to handle all of this neuro firing that's happening in the brain. Yeah. And after that, I was like really adamant about taking like a high dose of psychedelics, no food in my stomach whatsoever. And that's what I would recommend. And right now, a lot of people are saying like, don't eat 4 or 5 hours before. If you still want to have a light breakfast, you can definitely do that. But for me, it's either yes, full on yes or full on no. So for me, it's like no foods the day of taking any psychedelic.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Have you experimented with this?
So when I was, of course, this in legal states for terms of service reasons. But when I was in Amsterdam, the first time that I experienced anything with truffles, the person that we got them from at the Magic Mushroom store, which we're now kind of, because Raquel has gone back and tried to find this shop and she couldn't find it. So we're now kind of convinced that this was like a spiritual apparition that like opened this shop just for us. Cause I don't like, he was the nicest dude in the world too. So he had recommended don't eat anything, the morning of, and so like anything before you take them. So I didn't eat anything. I think maybe I had like some grapes or something like that, and it was fine during the trip, but then afterwards I had really bad stomach pain. Like it was weird. And I had and then I think the next time I took psychedelics, I can't remember if I ate or not. I might have done something different to see, but I had like similar effects. But I also think I took like either way too much or not enough. I don't know. The dosage on that one was questionable.
Yeah, I
what
really
did you take the second time?
I don't even remember how much it was, and I don't know if I finished what we were taking either. Yeah, they were mushrooms. Yeah, yeah.
I really wish we knew exactly what dose it was. Would you happen to know how much they pump into like a bar?
I think that was
chocolate. Like
I think it was 2.5 milligrams is what we took in on that chocolate bar. I think, or it was total 2.5.
5 grams probably.
Or grams, yeah.
Milligrams, it's definitely
we
grams.
were tripping.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 is a decent dose for sure.
Yeah, but we split one of those bars.
That, like the combination with cacao. Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's probably
That's
like
still a
1
decent
point something. Yeah.
1.75? No, that's not true. That's 1.25.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned truffles and like stomach issue, right? Because like truffles became like a thing in the Netherlands after in 2008. Mushrooms became illegal because unfortunately this young French girl was probably not in the best setting died on truffles, but she also had speed and MDMA and a lot of alcohol in their system. And like since the things that were legal were the mushrooms, the government decided to ban the mushrooms. But they never mentioned something in the law that says something about growing anything under the ground. So the truffles is a different way of like forcing the mycelium, which is the main body of the fungus, right, to grow a fruiting body underground. And what we see a lot is that like these truffles contain a lot more baeocystin and other different mycotoxins that, to me personally, are not as pleasant. So I have more stomach issues with magic truffles than I do have with magic mushrooms.
Same. So there's actually, I mean, I always thought that truffles were the same thing as mushrooms, except, you know, they're grown differently. So is that not true then, or?
So you're basically forcing an organism to grow against its natural way. And this happens by not exposing it to sufficient air. And then because when the mycelium starts dying in a fruiting environment, and that means that like there's no more food available, it's like there's a lot of carbon. Normally at this moment you give it fresh air and then it grows mushrooms so it can spread its spores for the next generation. But if you like force truffles, you never give it this fresh air, and you don't give it sufficient like space to grow, and it starts trying to grow the fruiting body inside the substrate or the mycelium, and it's basically forcing this organism to do something that it's not made to do. So it's the same species. They all grow Psilocybin cubensis, which is the most easy to cultivate magic mushroom, but underground, and then there are these different conditions. So they're a little different, but they're also completely different than the black and white truffles that you cannot cultivate and people find in Italy and go and like sell for really ridiculously high prices.
Yeah, we're talking about specific psychedelic.
Yeah.
Wow, I never knew that there was like some sort of toxin that's produced. But I mean, it makes sense. You know, if you're creating something that's not in its natural conditions, obviously there's probably going to be some, you know, pros in that it's legal. There's some loopholes that you guys in the Netherlands are figuring out, like, oh yeah, it doesn't grow above ground, therefore we could sell it because mushrooms are above ground and those are illegal. But you know, like the toxin thing, that's really interesting. The only time I've ever had any stomach issues has always been on truffles. Good to know. Good to know.
It's the only time I threw up from any psilocybe species was eating truffles.
Yeah.
It's full on.
I came very close to throwing up, but yeah, it's would you think that these are compounds that could maybe be seen in mushrooms as well? Like maybe Megan was experiencing some.
For sure, baeocystin and like other mycotoxins are definitely always present in mushrooms. It's just like higher in truffles than in like the regular fruiting bodies. Like this is interesting how you pointed out like the bad grow. Like for one, like mushrooms are hyper accumulative, so that means that anything in the substrates they will absorb as well. So if people have used manure of cows that got a lot of heavy metal food that passes through the cow's system, right? And that's in the poop, and then the mushrooms will grow from that poop, and they will also have some of these heavy metals in them. And this is one of the reasons why it's actually just really good to grow your own mushrooms, so you know like what love and what foods you gave the mushrooms that you're ultimately also consuming.
So speaking of cow poop, I've always I can't look at I can't look at cow pastures the same ever again. Ever since you and I had that conversation where you're like, oh, you live in the South, go find a cow pasture, you'll find some psilocybin.
What?
Another question. yeah, for real. Like, okay, first of all, tell us about the difference between, you know, the primary, secondary decomposers, where the mushrooms lie, and their function in life in general. Like, what is a psilocybin mushroom's purpose, and why did they grow in cow farms?
That's a good question. What is a psilocybin mushroom's purpose? Well, that's like, I think a big question that we do not know. Why would a mushroom create compounds like psilocybin and psilocin that gives primates like us this ridiculously life-altering experience? Like, I don't know. There's McKenna, obviously, with the really famous stoned ape hypothesis, believes that these mushrooms consciously started making these compounds to bring ourselves as humans to a higher level of consciousness that we are right now, and we can interact and we can like transfer on knowledge to next generations. So that's an idea. And especially if you look at more indigenous cultures, like here in Guatemala and the Mayan lands, Mayans were known to eat over 54 different species of psilocybin mushrooms. So there was like this ridiculously strong connection to psilocybin mushrooms and the culture. Also, if you look at the Celts, or like even in Europe, where you have not so much Psilocybin cubensis and the big fleshy psilocybin mushrooms that you find here or anywhere in like more tropical warm climates, but you have the Liberty caps. A lot of these traditions, they talk about brewing meat, which gave you this ridiculously esoteric experiences. And this was often done because mushrooms store really well in honey. So you store the mushrooms in the honey, then you make the meat from the honey, and then some of the psilocybin and psilocin is transferred to the honey, and then you have like a really good party drink, basically.
That's dope. That's really dope.
And yeah, it's really dope. And so if you look at it like it's a non-human way of what the purpose is of psilocybin species, they are what we know as secondary decomposers. So they eat the feces, like not all psilocybin species, but Psilocybin cubensis specifically. They eat the feces of other animals to decompose those compounds that the animal couldn't decompose completely, and that's why it's shedded out, and then it breaks it down into smaller particles, and then eventually it becomes so small that it's accessible, and like so plants and other smaller organisms can digest these more broken down compounds. And that's basically what the function is of like a lot of the mycelium, which is like when we talk about mushrooms, there's so many more species of fungi than actually can produce mushrooms, but like we just see the mushroom, right? And that's why we can relate to it. But there's a lot more. If any mold that's also a fungus doing the same job, it breaks down the more complex chemicals into something that's more accessible. And if like it can go really small, where, for example, yeast that we use to brew alcohol, actually that's like making the ethanol as a defense mechanism of the yeast, where for an example, an apple has fallen on the ground, there's basically a massive micrological warfare going on to get that apple, right? Mm-hmm. And what yeast does, it produces ethanol to start to try to fight off the bacteria, because the bacteria cannot survive as much of the alcohol as the yeast can, and then the yeast can easily digest the apple at its own pace. So there's all these different niches that the mushrooms or different species of fungi play into in an ecosystem. And right now, some studies are actually suggesting that these fungi are really adaptable, right? So we used to think, okay, an oyster mushroom, is the first thing that starts eating. It's a white rot fungus, so it's the first thing that starts eating a dead tree, for example. That's a primary decomposer. And then a Psilocybin cubensis, it eats the feces of, for example, cattle or like horses. That's a secondary decomposer. But now we're seeing that some fungi start as what we call a symbiotic endofungus, which is like in the plants, the cell walls of the plant, you can find these specific fungi, and they can have like a symbiotic relationship with the plant. But then if the plant becomes sick, this symbiotic relationship can actually turn into a parasitic relationship. So this fungus actually starts eating the plant, and then it can start decomposing it. So it moves into these different stages. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the biggest organism on Earth, which is this massive honey fungus in Oregon, which is like, you can see it from like really high in the sky, because it's like it made this massive meadow basically. And it starts as a parasite and it kills the tree, and then after the tree is dead, it actually starts decomposing the tree and breaking it down into smaller
Never
particles.
Heard of it. That's cool.
Yeah,
fungi.
That's very cool.
Fungi. Another thing, just getting into mushrooms, I realized like how abundant they are. I never paid attention until I really started looking around and how frequent you find them, whether they're secondary or usually I find the primary decomposer like by decaying wood or something if I'm going on a hike. So another question kind of stemming off what I asked, why cow pastures? A lot of people want to know if there's an optimal time during the year or an area in the US specifically where you could find these in the wild, besides trying to get your, face shut off by a farmer. Like, do these things exist in the wild?
Oh yeah, and especially in the United States, there's so many different species of psilocybe mushroom that you can find in the wild. And again, I believe I'm not a United States citizen. I have no clue about your laws, but I believe picking them is not completely legal. But if you live, for example, in the South, hypothetically, Psilocybe cubensis is found in the warmer times of the year. I'd say summer. I don't really know the climate exactly. And like, for example, in Australia, there's places in Australia that have Psilocybe cubensis mushroom growing every week of the year. It doesn't matter. It's like the climate is the same and it just keeps growing.
Wow.
A couple months ago, on the East Coast, on the Northeast Coast, you had Psilocybe ovicillata, which is like this normally less common Psilocybe species that's a little bit less potent. And then in the West Coast, you can find Psilocybe cyanescens. You can find Psilocybe acescens. There's all of these. And like they're completely different, right? Because Psilocybe cyanescens doesn't grow on cow poop, but it grows from wood. And like Psilocybe ovicillata, just grows from the soil. And then Liberty caps, which you can also find in more temperate climates, they grow in grass fields, not necessarily out of cow poop. So they're all quite different, and they all like pop up at different stages of the year.
Cool.
And I encourage you, if you're interested, to find, like, do some research yourself. And it's like, hey, I live in this area. There's you can definitely go to Mycotopia. That's a mushroom forum, and there's a lot of people foraging for these mushrooms, and they like to share it on the internet.
I've always been really scared. I don't know about you, Megan, but
because isn't it really hard? Okay, how long did it take you? I was going to ask you, how long did it take you before you were confident, like picking wild mushrooms and being like, yeah, I'm not going to die if I eat this?
That's a good question. I think it's different with every mushroom, right? I'm like very, very aware of like that. If you pick any amanita, you need to know your stuff really well, because amanitas can look very similar. Psilocybe, especially Psilocybe cubensis, I was picking a lot in Southeast Asia and Australia, because it's like they have all these features that are very unique to them. And especially what people call the bruising of the psilocybin. If you pick a mushroom and you know what a Psilocybe cubensis looks like from pictures from the internet, and you find one that looks like it and it bruises blue, it's not like, depending again where you are in the world, because Psilocybe cubensis grows everywhere, and I'm not aware of like maybe a mushroom that is similar, looks similar in Africa, and it doesn't grow anywhere else in the world. But the places where I foraged, there was nothing else that would do that, like have that same trick, have the same gill pattern, have the same cap, have a veil, bruise blue after picking it from a cow manure or any like vegetarian mammal. Like I've actually picked water buffalo manure mushrooms. I've actually had elephant manure mushrooms as well in Thailand.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
really cool.
but it's like you gotta understand the features, and there's really good field guides. And unless you know 100% certain, I do not suggest anybody picking anything. A spore print is also a fantastic way to figure out what mushroom you're working with. So taking the mushroom home, cutting off the cap and putting it on some white paper, and it will either drop, like Psilocybe cubensis spores are really like dark purple-y. And a good example of why the spore print can be really important is like you have this super delicious mushroom called the parasol mushroom. And we have a beautiful community member who is from Russia, and she thought this is like a parasol mushroom. They're like, yeah, we can eat this. And I was like, I'm not 100% certain. Let's make a spore print. And if the spore print is black, you can eat it. If the spore print is green, it's actually a false parasol, and you will have horrible stomach issues for a couple of days. And the spores, it turned out to be green. So it's really good that we took the spore print and we didn't just eat it by being confident.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So how many years do you have like a number? How many years have you been researching mushrooms in general? Like this seems like this is like a lifelong thing.
I think like my parents were actually quite mycophobic. So I remember really well that like when I was like walking through the forest and I saw an Amanita muscaria, and I was so drawn by this red radiant beauty of a mushroom. And my parents were like, don't touch it, don't come near it. So for most of my like life, I was actually like quite scared of mushrooms, and I was only eating the white button mushrooms, like the agaricus mushrooms. And then it's like when I first had Psilocybe pubensis mushrooms, that's when I just started being interested in all kinds of mushrooms. And it like on and off for like, let's say 9 years. Yeah.
Wow.
I've been studying mushrooms.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Speaking of studying mushrooms, you run what's quite literally called the Fungi Academy.
Yeah, Fungi Academy.
So can you tell us about what the program's about and how accessible it is to the people here that are listening?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we're currently creating what we would call the Sacred Mycology online school, online Sacred Mycology school. And this encompasses a lot of aspects of what we call sacred mycology, and it's mushroom cultivation. And Raquel has actually seen the mushroom cultivation course that we've currently been building. And this takes you, any person that's interested in growing mushrooms and doesn't really know where to start, through the whole process. And not just like the super basics, but we also teach you how to do sterile work, lab work, how to make agar transfers. And I can actually show you something real quick.
Yes.
1 minute.
Show the class.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. This is really cool. It's legit too. The Fungi Academy courses, it's like DSLR cameras, effects.
Wow.
Like graphics, transitions.
It's some top notch. Like
it is top notch production.
Yeah.
Mycelium.
This is mycelium grown in isolation. So this is what we call a culture.
Sick.
And this culture is an agar-to-agar culture. So you can grow this on an agar medium. So this is like a super sciencey petri dish. And we will, like in the course, you'll not only learn how to get mycelium going, but also select what we call the rhizomorphic, the best genes of the mycelium. And then start working with this to start creating your own strain of mushrooms, if that is so what you desire.
that's so cool.
And that's
So
just one of the things. Yeah. And you can do this in your home. You just need like a plastic box, what we call a still air box. So that's like a box with 2 holes that you can work with your hands in, and then you sanitize most of the space with 70% alcohol. And then there's lots of stuff that goes about this, but like there's a lot of new techniques that were developed in the last 15 to 20 years that can actually make mushroom cultivation really accessible for everybody, wherever you are. And you don't have to have a fancy science lab or anything. I know people who've done it in their bathrooms. I know people who've done it in basements. You can do it anywhere. Like Peter McCoy, who wrote Radical Mycology, which is, if you're interested in mushrooms, this book is fantastic. It's like 500 pages, but he's a really good writer and he's a really good teacher. And I like highly recommend this. But he even claims that he made like an agar transfer. Like, to get something like this means that no other microorganisms, not one bacteria, not one like single cellular organism has made it on this piece of food, basically, except for the mycelium. And this is can be quite challenging to get. But like Peter McCoy even claimed that he was in the back of a van, edited a transfer with success. I've done it just in the open air. Just like no still air box, no high efficiency particulate air filter, just moved it through. And I also had like success. So you can get a lot of success with like really low tech tools. And that's what we're all about, making it accessible, making it fun. And showing that mushroom cultivation is not only for like big science nerds, but can be literally for everybody.
Yeah. Can some of my mods please link us in chat for Fungi Academy? And it's a course that you could take and learn for yourself and figure out how to, grow mycelium mushrooms from, just pretty much nothing. Like, I mean, you need the spores. You need to figure out how to get the spores. But once you figure that out, I feel like
the spores are, luckily enough, because they don't contain any psychoactive compounds, the spores are like legal in most places in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know in America.
So wherever you are in the world.
They're legal in all the states except Idaho, California, and Georgia. Everywhere else.
And, what an odd realm of like what?
Yeah, it's really weird, and depending on where you are in the states, like Michigan, for instance, just decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms.
Oh, interesting.
Ann Arbor, right?
Yeah, Ann Arbor, Michigan. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice.
And then
all of the mushrooms
a few months ago.
Really? Michigan?
All of the natural plant medicine. So shout out to Decriminalize Nature. The people at Decriminalize Nature are like not only the bigger collective, but all the individual collectives. They're doing amazing work to make all these amazing medicines accessible. Like decriminalizing is already such a big step ahead, where people will at least not be prosecuted and punished for like picking a mushroom and experimenting what this mushroom can do. And that to me is like super important. So yeah, shout out Decriminalize Nature. If you want to be more involved, join your local Decriminalize Nature organization for sure.
Yeah. So a lot of people are scared to even kind of invest in the world of fungi in general. Why do you think, just speaking to the people that you've spoken to about phobias, and especially growing up with parents, like, where does this stem from? Why as a society are we like, fungus, no?
That is a good question, because not everywhere in the world is this mycophobia necessarily, right? If you like the Eastern European and the Russian countries, like they seem to have way more mycophilic traditions. So they love mushrooms, and it's actually like a really popular pastime to go with your family and hunt for mushrooms. I thought about this a lot, and there's like zero like backing of this, but this is my piece of the pie regarding why our Western culture is a little bit more mycophobic, and this is what I believe can be part of the witch trials that happened in the 13th century, and what people call the Reinheitsgebot, which is the Bavarian beer laws, like people say in English, which were at this point in time everything except for malt, barley, and water was banned from adding to beers. And I believe that the Christian church chasing these witches for so long, I believe that the women were actually in the Western society, in the European society, were actually the knowledge holders regarding which mushrooms were abundant and like good for you. And I really believe that this tradition has been like super strong in the West as well. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Otzi the Iceman. He was like a frozen man that was 5,200 years old, and he was found in on the border between Italy and Austria in the early 90s, and he was completely frozen in ice, and he was uncovered like within hours of that he was unfrozen. So all of the gear that he had on him was still super intact, and we found that there's 2 mushrooms on his hip, and that was the bird's polypore and the tinder conch. And so there's like the bird's polypores, Piptoporus, I think they changed the name, but Piptoporus betulinus, and this has a compound in it that's really good against parasites. And he had this parasite called whipworm. So this person not only knew what illness he had in his stomach 5,200 years ago, but he also knew which mushroom in his environment could help him treat his disease.
Wow.
So I really believe that in our European culture, we have a heritage of this mycophilic and understanding of the mushroom culture, but somehow during this long Christian reign and the hunt for what I think might have been the people holding this mushroom knowledge, with the women, the witches, has been eradicated over time. And then if nobody has knowledge, it's scary, you know. It's like there's some mushrooms that can give you a very unpleasant time, and there's mushrooms that can definitely kill you. And then if there's no need for food, and this is why I think that these traditions were still maintained in Eastern Europe, is that like they in winter, like in fall, when winter is coming, you need to have as much food for your family as possible, and this often means going to hunt for mushrooms.
That's really interesting.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You know, that I'm sure there was a lot of traditions that were in that generation of women that just disappeared because of it. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So kind of switching topics here. A lot of people take mushrooms not only for like these ritualistic kind of ethereal out of body experiences through macrodosing, but a lot of people microdose for a multitude of kind of alternative medicine benefits. So like depression, PTSD. I also had quite a few questions on Alzheimer's. So I know these are huge topics. Can we kind of take little bites at a time? Like, let's talk about depression and how mushrooms can kind of your own personal experience, of course, but also how generally how you treat something like depression through taking something that you can grow out of the ground in your basement or like in your backyard. How does that happen?
That is a good question. And I'll start off with my own personal experience. I've went through like a really intense depression through my teenage years that I felt was unescapable, and like being kind of like in a dire situation, like finding like whatever will help. And I didn't even know that mushrooms would help, but I just liked drugs at this time. It's like, well, mushrooms are a drug. So it is like, I saw it as an escape. So slowly after experimenting for the first time, I just went to the store and bought like the biggest dose they had. And my parents were out of town. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to have these by myself on a beautiful summer day. And I just had this profound life-changing experience where I was just like filled with like waves of euphoria and love, not only for the world around me, but also for myself, that I've never experienced this before. And then like it showed me that like even I, like as a person that didn't I didn't perceive myself as somebody that could experience happiness so well. I was always faking the happiness, but like I thought like, well, this is just me. I can't really be truly happy. But then I felt, whoa, I can be truly happy. And I also saw, I was actually like watching The Lion King on the come up, and like during like the Timon and Pumbaa when he's in the jungle, like Simba's in the jungle, I actually realized like, I spent too much time with Timon and Pumbaa in the jungle because I was playing a lot of video games. So that's like how I related to it. I need to step up for my purpose. Yeah. And then I related to Simba so much, and that gave me like a lot of strength and a lot of motivation. And then like I was listening to the tallest man on earth, and like it was after the peak, and I started smoking a little bit of weed, and I just started crying out of happiness. And that was the first time that I actually remember crying out of happiness, and that release was just so powerful and good. And like the after that was not like, okay, yeah, depression over, let's take it world, but it was a really good first step. It was like, hey, I can do this. I have the sovereignty and the power to change my own reality for my own good. And that's like how I personally experienced mushrooms helping me with my depression. It creates this abundance of love and like self-love. And I feel personally with my depression story is like, my issue with depression was that I didn't love myself. And mushrooms taught me and showed me that I am lovable, even by myself.
Oh, it's like it opens up those areas. It really lets you like drop all of your guards, allow you to be truly vulnerable, that like feel empathy. That is, I think, a big thing with a lot of people that experience psychedelics for the first time, is that they're like, whoa, I didn't know what empathy was like until I took psychedelics.
That's like the empathy part is like super important, because you like not only like we discussed before, right, that like the psychedelics are like a mirror of showing yourself, but you also deeply understand the experience of other beings and not only necessarily humans, right? And I feel like they just emphasize everything: love, empathy, all the things that like to me are important in life.
So how does that, do you know anything about how mushrooms actually tackle depression? Like, how does it work in your brain? What actually happens?
So I do know that since we like the shift that can happen with this neuroplasticity and like these new neural pathways that are formed during this process, like the depression, the people that are clinically depressed, there's like a specific neurochemistry that's happening that people somehow can identify. And like often like with the clinical studies that are being done right now, people do see a shift after 1, 2, or 3 sessions of these psychedelic compounds. And like how it chemically works, like this, because then we're talking about like what's going on in the brain and what's working with the consciousness, right? And how that is related to each other. And I think there's a lot to explore in this realm that I'm personally not completely certain of. There's definitely like a lot of people like Stanislav Grof. We actually not only doing a mushroom cultivation course, but there's also a psychedelic, we call the Sacred Mushroom Journey Work course with our brother Julian Vane, and he wrote this amazing book getting higher, and he spent a lot of his like time like looking how to create ceremony for personal growth, and like going at it from lots of different angles. How something as powerful, like if a change can happen from like magic mushrooms or like any other psychedelic, I can only speak from my own experience, and I have no clue what actually goes on in the brain. And I also don't think that there's a formula that works for everybody. I think everybody needs to experience something different to get to that same point, because everybody's source of pain and depression and trauma is different, right? It's like my trauma was caused by something completely different than somebody that has post-traumatic stress disorder, because I've never been in a war situation. I've never been harassed or molested or attacked that would have caused that PTSD for me. So,
Yeah, I know that there's not a lot of, I mean, there's a fair amount of research, you know, and clinical trials being done on psilocybin and microdosing, but most of what's discovered is like, one, there's not a lot of neurotoxicity, meaning like you can't really like classically OD on it, meaning if you take too much, like your lungs aren't going to stop, or like your brain's not going to stop functioning, unlike some other drugs like opiates or some uppers, stimulants and stuff, which is great. But I find it interesting how they can't really pinpoint exactly what the neural pathway of like what happens with psilocybin in your brain, like what regions light up, because there's so much that actually goes on. That sounds about right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's like, it's also difficult because we can only see where more energy is going, and like we cannot open up somebody's brain to see what's going on inside, what is still alive, you know? So that's like definitely a hurdle in this whole process. To go back into like this other question of like Alzheimer's, and like I don't know necessarily about like psilocybin mushrooms and Alzheimer's, but I've like my grandma is still struggling from Alzheimer's and dementia, and like I was not in the Netherlands for a long time, but when I was actually like helped her with some lion's mane mushroom, and the lion's mane over time, actually I saw like definitely a cognitive enhancement happening. She seemed to be a little bit more aware, and like she seemed to, I wouldn't say it like it got her back up, but like the gradation, the downhill slope was just like less steep, and it was like it just went slower, and I felt like she was not going backwards as fast as she was before.
Wow, lion's mane. I've heard about lion's mane before. That's really awesome. So you said she's Alzheimer's patient, and that had something to do with like just how does that work? Do you know any of the research going on with lion's mane? How do you just take a mushroom like that?
I know a little bit of that, but like lion's mane. The Latin name is Erycinium erinaceus, and there's some compounds that are found in these mushrooms that are also, by the way, they're absolutely delicious. They look beautiful, delicious. You can even cultivate them yourself. And these mushrooms, they create these compounds. I think one compound is called Erycinium, and this compound has been found, and I don't know how they did these studies, right, to like promote cognitive enhancement, and also, again, the same as psilocybin mushrooms, without any of the psychotropic or psychedelic effects, create this neuroplasticity where it is easier for the brain to adapt to new situations. And what, from my experience of talking to people that have had brain damage or have had like something like Alzheimer's, like I forget the syndrome that's called after you got lots of concussions, that's tackling a lot of American football players and rugby players. But I talked to a lot of people that have found that like taking lion's mane mushroom actually like started recovering their memory. So there's some evidence suggesting that not only can this create more neuroplasticity, it also can restore some of the neurons that have been damaged in the brain. And that's super exciting.
So these sports players, as a result of like head-on kind of trauma in their and like juggling their brains all the time, like physically. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, absolutely nuts.
And we're just scratching the surface there. Because there's so many more mushrooms, and we know, for example, that like there's a lot, like a really ancient tradition from the east, from China, with reishi, which is an antihistamine. They also call it the mushroom of immortality. But like this subgenus, this genus of mushrooms called Degenadermas, which means the shining skins, which is a reishi, artisconk, and so many more mushrooms. They create these very specific compounds called ganaderic acids. And I see mushrooms as like a mycelium as these ultimate like biochemical creators of life, right, of the planet. And they create these really intensely like complicated compounds that can serve a lot of health and medicinal benefits that we're just like scratching the surface of. You know, turkey tail mushroom has some compounds called polysaccharide peptide and polysaccharide creatine that have shown to like reduce cancer growth and even completely halt cancer growth. There's like a lot of evidence that's suggesting that these compounds like are completely like can increase cancer survival rates, like super high. Cordyceps, which is a mushroom that's a parasitic mushroom that grows out of the heads of insects, creates this compound called cordycepin, which is shown to like actively combat breast cancer cells, but also gives you it produces some of the building blocks of ATP, and ATP is adenine triphosphate, which is basically that's the chemical that makes us able to move our body. It just breaks, like this chemical breaks apart, and that creates the energy that our muscles can use to move. And there's like so many mushrooms that are not yet been studied because these mushrooms have been known to be consumed and have been studied quite intricately. And right now we're like in not only a little bit of the new psychedelic renaissance, but also the new mushroom renaissance, because there's a lot of new research coming out and like finding all these amazing benefits that all these different mushrooms can have on our health.
It really makes me think about how much like we could know if we just legalized like natural medicine, like, and we just started to like, instead of looking at mushrooms or like marijuana, like there's a lot of natural medicine that if we looked at it instead of a drug, but instead a medicine, you could have a lot of benefits out of all of it. And it's like, I mean, this gives me a lot of like hope, like, hey, that's really cool that people are researching it and that there is all of these, you know, different things. And someday in the future, I feel like humanity will get to that point.
Oh yeah. It's interesting what we perceive as a drug. I don't know if you guys have practiced breath work before, but I've gotten higher than like with most any other compound just from breathing air in a specific manner. And
so true.
Like how we perceive what we perceive to be a drug and what we perceive to be a medicine is so vague, and especially like you guys are in the States, so you probably like know of the Xanax and Valium epidemic. And I've dabbled a little bit with those drugs when I was in Cambodia, and nothing was as scary to me. It's like, man, this makes me feel so good. This makes me want more. This is not good for my body. This is not good for doing anything productive. I'm not becoming more creative. I'm kind of numbing everything down. And that to me was like, why is that legal? It's not legal where I'm from. It's like, why is that legal in the States? And all these like medicines like marijuana or mushrooms are just like completely banned, with even like, I think it's called Schedule 1 or something. No medicinal benefits. Yeah, no medicinal benefits. Like, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
Yeah,
like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It really
Schedule
is.
1 narcotics.
Yeah,
What we call them here in the States, which is crazy because that's where mushrooms lie. I mean, right there with methamphetamine and you know all these other crazy opiates that would like heroin. It's up there with heroin, and that is just so mind blowing to me. They're not even made of the same stuff. I mean, they're completely different categories of drug, you know?
Yeah. And this is what I really like about Hamilton Morris, right? Because like even like the drugs, like heroin, oh no, that definitely has no medicinal purpose. I'm like, well, maybe it has. Like, I've smoked like opiates before. Maybe we shouldn't inject it. But like I've heard lots of good stories from people that have smoked heroin. But often the people that get in heroin addiction are people that have been on like prescription painkillers, and they want those painkillers. They want painkillers, and then they move to something that's more available on the street, and then you move to something like heroin, and to have anything like that in a corner that's like no medicinal benefits, I think is not a progressive way of thinking as a society. It's like ketamine in a lot of places is also a Schedule 1, but it's like ketamine, like so as far as I know, if you come to an emergency without any of your details in a foreign country, the one drug that they can give you in an emergency room in a hospital is ketamine, because nobody ever, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong, and please tell me if I'm wrong, has had like an allergic reaction to ketamine. So there's like a painkiller that's was used a lot. And now there's a lot of new research that coming out that ketamine might also be a ridiculously powerful tool in the fight against depression. So I'm like, I don't believe anything should be in Schedule 1. I think they should just be regulated. And we, as adults, need to figure out a way how to deal with that these chemicals exist and that people want to take these chemicals.
Yeah. It's pretty alarming to me that overdoses, I think it's like the second leading cause. So specifically, mostly from like prescribed medicine from doctors that are saying, yes, here's the green light to take these pills every day. I think it's a second leading death, second biggest cause in deaths in America. It's crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
that is pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's something really messed up with the law schemes over here.
That's really
and like
what? That's so stupid.
Yeah. I think like doctors and like everybody comes from a different time, right? And like it seems we're all quite in the same generation, and we were raised with the internet, so we're doing all of our own research and we're figuring all these things out. But a lot of the more senior doctors, they were still learning from books and what other people told them. And maybe once they had a phone call with somebody on the other side of the world, they would go to a conference on the other side of the world. But I think this whole COVID situation, I hope that it's gonna elaborate the fact is like, well, maybe our whole medicinal system should stop focusing on curing, but start focusing on preventing. And my mom is a nurse, and like a lot of her friends are doctors, right? And like I've had conversations with them, and they know nothing about the medicinal benefits like of fasting or like food. And they're not healthy people, but they know about how to cure sicknesses, but they don't know how to prevent sickness. And I think that is like where we have to focus our like attention on way more as a society. Is like, let's focus on prevention instead of curing. And I think it will be a lot better for everybody. But who knows?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've never thought about it that way, but that is a much better, it's a very backwards way of looking at things. Like, treat yourself like shit because it's fine. We know how to cure you from everything. And it's like, you're never going to be able to cure people from everything. So why not just teach them how to not treat themselves like shit?
Yeah.
I always said that if obesity or some sort of like disease like obesity had a cure in a pill form, then there would be no obese people in the world. And it's a really good metaphor for all really other sicknesses that can be cured by a pill. It's like I think everybody's mentality is like, yeah, if you can find the cure in a pill, like an antibiotic, it can cure this, but it's like you don't see the repercussions of taking this like fix all cure one cure all pill. You know, you're messing up your intestinal flora, for instance, with taking just an antibiotic. And you know, think about everything else that happens if you regularly take opiates. And nobody really thinks about how your body is trying to balance like taking these every day.
I really love that, like somebody from so long ago, I think it was 2,300 years ago, Hippocrates, who's a Greek philosopher, and he said famously, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy foods. And this way, for me, like I've noticed this like a lot personally, because I was quite overweight again during this depression. I just became really, really big, and I was not capable of doing all the physical activities that like my peers were able to do. And that made me realize, okay, and I started exercising, still felt like shit. So I started cutting out what I thought was like the bad food. And like, it's a long process, and you have to cut out the things that are not necessarily comfortable for like you and your life. And it's definitely difficult if you're stuck in this weird pattern that you have to work a job you don't like for 40 hours. And like, you really love pizza from your takeout pizza, and like watch a movie, but maybe by yourself, smoke some weed, drink some beer. That's like, it's all escape mechanisms from living a life only by trying to struggle and hold on to like what you think is reality. And I feel also that like psychedelics, to tackle that back into this whole subject, can show you that like, hey, this is like, you're cut out for more than this. You can do more than this. And it gives a lot of confidence, not only for like getting out of a mental state of mind that you might not like, but I started traveling, for example. I was doing really well. I was a sales manager. I had like 120 people working for me. was making a lot of money for a 21-year-old, but I was not happy because that's what I was doing. I was going to a job I didn't like doing. And I went home, or like I didn't go home. I just started drinking beer at the office. And then we went like to party till like 4 o'clock in the morning, MDMA, speed, whatnot, cocaine. And I would wake up and do the same fucking shit. And I knew that this was not healthy. And during a big psychedelic journey, I heard my own subconscious, like, this is the weirdest thing. I've never experienced this anywhere else, but like, it was like my own voice was sitting next to me and like almost like very firmly said, like told me in my ear, go travel. And I was like, okay, I know what I need to do. The next day I just quit my job. I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. I just go with this strong gut feeling, and everything worked out in the end, you know, but like being confident. And I like, again, where like what you were saying is like, because somehow you perceive death in a psychedelic experience, like a part of you dies and transforms into something else. That gives you so much confidence to do any other radical step. And it doesn't have to be like, go say goodbye to everybody you love and everything you know and go travel the world by yourself with only a backpack. But it can possibly mean quit the job you don't like, or like move out to where other friends that you might like more are living somewhere else in the country. But sometimes change needs this radical step. And for me, psychedelics have given myself the confidence to take those steps. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love hearing about your journey, and like I would never have thought that you were somebody who was, you know, struggling with depression, like overweight. Just looking at you now, just your outlook and stuff, and what you preach, would never have thought that. But it's pretty incredible how you've made so many drastic changes in your own life.
Thank you.
Yeah. Quick question from chat. They want to know if OJ, like, what does OJ do when you take psilocybin? And
orange juice.
Yeah. Orange juice. I'm sorry.
Oh, this is a thing?
Is it true? Yeah. Apparently it's a thing that people chug a glass of orange juice and take mushrooms with it. Why does that work? And what does it do?
Interesting. So I know that like orange juice might not be the best option for this, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with what people call the lemon tag, where you soak your like mushrooms in lime juice specifically. And like, why lime juice? Well, there's like some people that are saying, and this has not been studied sufficiently yet, but that are saying that sugar actually has a negative effect, like represses the psychoactive effects of any psychedelic, right? So like orange juice is about 10% sugar still. So like you might have that acidity, but why a lot of people like the lemon tag and soaking their mushrooms in lime juice is that it, so mushrooms are created, like have lots of different compounds, and they're mainly polysaccharides. It's actually 90% water, but they're mainly polysaccharides. And polysaccharides are these really long, complex sugar chains that are not necessarily easy to process by our own body. But one of the main building blocks of why mushrooms have their shape, it's called chitin. And chitin is the same polysaccharide, like the building block of the exoskeleton of insects. And it's really tough, and we cannot digest this chitin. But if you soak your mushrooms in lime juice, you extract the active compounds of the mushroom, then you can drink the lime water. And often people eat the mushroom because you don't fully extract it just yet. And then you have a faster outcome. So as often people perceive to have a shorter duration. So instead of like 30, 40 minutes that you feel the mushrooms coming up, if you soak it in lime juice for what I believe is, I generally do 10, 15 minutes, but I also just generally like to eat and taste the mushroom. So I'm not the biggest fan of the lemon tag, but in 10, 15 minutes to 20 minutes, you can actually perceive the effects. And some people also perceive to have a shorter duration. So instead of 5 to 6 hours, they perceive 3 to 4 hours by soaking it in lemon juice. And maybe if you eat the mushrooms and then chug orange juice straight after, that might give a similar experience. I know also a lot of people don't like the taste of mushrooms, so maybe it's like to just wash down the flavor of the mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Taste of mushrooms never really bugged me, but that's kind of more personal preference. It just tastes really mushroomy. Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh, it tastes like dirt. I'm like, no, dirt tastes like dirt. Mushrooms taste like mushrooms.
Yeah. Exactly.
I get so offended.
Excuse me, I gotta go pee real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Drinking that cacao and tea is what he made before stream.
For sure.
Quick side story. Megan and I, actually, my first truffle trip, was with Megan.
Is that what Heartstrings is about?
Yeah, I wrote it literally right after that trip.
It's literally about me, guys. It's about me. I make this joke every time, but this one is truly about me.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, hands down one of the most crazy visual journeys. It wasn't even scary. Like, shit was shifting for me. You know, everything looked like it was a big movie scene, as in like my perception. I feel like I could see more colors and like I was seeing more lights, probably because my pupils were really dilated and you're actually letting in a lot more light than normal. But like, it was beautiful. It was really pretty. Everything was, I mean, another funny thing. I was like, guys, you should wear your bathing suits because you're going to want to take your clothes off. And like towards the end of the trip, we were all like in our underwear.
Yeah, we did all have our bathing suits on. We did all go. It was great because we were on the river. That was so. I don't think that there was a better place to take a psychedelic than in Amsterdam on the river.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
At the back.
Yeah, let's see. I'm going through my list of questions here, trying to get to everything. Megan, did you want to ask anything in particular?
No, keep going with your questions. All these questions are great. I did want to ask, so you mentioned the stoned ape theory briefly. How do you think that is like a high probability of what happened, or if it, like, in your opinion, do you think it's played an effect in evolution?
I think it's a very romantic story. It sounds really cool, right? Yeah, apes ate mushrooms and became smart.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'm missing,
right?
the only thing that I'm missing is like, how does that pass on to next generations? Like, how does that cognitive enhancement pass on to next generation? I understand how it can work as an individual, but do you create different genes then that you pass on to the next generation? What, like, I could perceive as a way of how it could have gone is that the apes would have eaten the mushrooms and then had this incredible urge to express themselves. And then with the help of the mushrooms, eventually language, like we know it, evolved. And with language came this massive increase in brain size and cognitive enhancement, because it's like it takes quite a bit of brain power to express and create a language. And that's one way I see that it could have gone about it, but just eating the mushrooms and having orgies like Terrence McKenna is saying, I don't know so much about that.
That does make a lot more sense, though.
So somebody in chat asked, they've been really curious about how mushrooms affect creativity and art in general. And do they simply lower inhibitions like alcohol, or did they actually alter perception and help generate new ideas?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think they definitely like lower that barrier, like a lot of people perceive with alcohol, where you just like you get more easily into flow states. And I have definitely personally experienced like a higher sense of physical awareness and physical control on certain psychedelics, and not necessarily mushrooms. I think for me personally, I experience that more with LSD, where I just feel like if I have a really high dose and I go over the peak and like go into the cosmos and then return, that I come back as a superhuman. I have access to all of my memories, all of my knowledge, all of my power, and like I can do basically everything that I feel comfortable with doing. And I've experienced this mainly with like juggling, where I was like just doing moves that I've like didn't even think were possible just by going into that flow state. So I think there's definitely some more room for us to tap into, and like I'm really like looking forward that we get past this idea of like, okay, it works as a therapeutic medicine, but like what about like moving ourselves even further than baseline as humans with these powerful medicines, not only healing the people that are damaged and sick, but also how can we create better art? How can we create a better living for everybody? And like one of my favorite stories is like that the double helix of the DNA was discovered during an LSD journey, right?
Really?
So can you imagine like how? Yeah, I forget the name of the guy that did it, but like that was just one of the ideas that came to fruition during a psychedelic journey. So we can go, if our scientists can accept this and start solving problems with the help of these medicines, I believe we can do everything. No doubt.
Paul Stamets was, tripping on mushrooms when he actualized this whole concept of like how the bees can save the environment, like save the world and create not biodiversity, but forget the word, but essentially like his whole entire life's work with bees was as a result of him, microdosing over and over again and coming up with these concepts.
Dang.
And yeah, what I really love of his theory on creativity or curing depression in general. Depression is a very objective term. It's different for everybody. But he believes that if people can stay creative, whatever that is, not even just painting or making music, just like creating something in their life, like building a shelf or something, that is the cure for depression. And I think mushrooms or psychedelics in general opens up kind of that barrier where you're like, oh, I'm not a creative person, I can't do that. Well, all of a sudden you're tripping and you're like, oh my God, like I really want to like bake some bread right now. I've never baked bread, but like it shows you a different path that you can go down. You've never done it before, but now you can. And all of a sudden you created something that you've never done. And I think that has a lot to do with probably neuroplasticity, I'd assume, and being able to like shape your brain differently from where it was.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely in the right train. And this like actually puts me in a train of thought that I have a little bit, is that like psychedelics might take you more into that that neurochemistry and the way that the brain functions as that we were experienced when we were children, right? Like little kids. And suddenly you're like filled with like this wonder and like this amazement for the world. And you're like, wow, like I've never made a bread. Let's make a bread. Or it's like, oh, you want to paint? And like you're excited just by looking at plants and trees. And like, that's what I see. But I see kids under the age of 5 that have not been programmed by much yet, but just like full of wonder for the world. And just like, yeah, if I see my friends at like a more casual, like psychedelic party and like, I just see a bunch of children having fun, play, so like true. You can play hours with some rocks. It's fantastic. And I think that connecting to the inner child, to the like inner wonder and creativity and excitement. And yeah, I think that is the tool, the gateway to creativity and learning. And I think if you're committing to being creative or growing, like learning a skill, like cooking, like baking bread or playing an instrument, if you're committed to that, like which often you see kids when they get excited about something, you have to have passion for it. And I'm not saying if you don't like cooking, go cooking, but find the thing that makes you excited to really grow. And I feel like that is the ultimate cure for depression, is doing something you absolutely love to do and do it all the fucking time.
Yeah. So different topic here. Fungal intelligence. I will admit, I don't even know what that means. So can you tell us what fungal intelligence is and how does it work?
So it's very interesting, right? Because mycelium is basically a network of single cellular organisms that are working together. And that's weird to understand because they don't really have they don't have a brain. They don't have a neuronic system. They're just this mycelium, this collective effort of these single cellular organisms working together. And somehow they're, if you perceive it like I do, they're making really intelligent decisions. Like there's this slime mold that's so efficient at just looking for foods that it finds the fastest path and actually goes out hunting first, right? It goes out hunting, it finds the best path, it reorganizes itself, and then it finds the fastest path to distribute the food to the whole colony of this slime molds. That to me is really, really intelligent.
Isn't that the stuff that they used to like make the train system in somewhere? Like
Tokyo, yeah.
Wow.
I've heard about that. Yeah. You might be able to explain the experiment better, but they like set up food sources in like a model of Tokyo, and they had the slime like come up with a better system than what they had.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they put up pieces of oats on like the key center points of the Tokyo railway system, and they just looked at like how is this slime mold like makes this more efficient, and it actually found a better way to design this Tokyo railway system than they had previously done. And I don't know if they actually started implementing it from what they've learned from the slime mold. And this is just one way of like showing intelligence, right? Because like we were talking before about like why do mushrooms like psilocybin, cubensis creates these compounds like psilocybin? What's the benefits? And like why do like mushrooms like lion's mane create these compounds that are good for our brains? They don't have brains themselves. Why would they do that? That's just weird. And like from my perspective is that like we perceive anything without a brain not to be intelligence, but I believe there's like this deeper consciousness that is what like again Rupert Sheldrake called morphic resonance, that connection to the all encompassing consciousness of the universe that we just that do not perceive because we have an ego, but the mycelium can tap into and create all these compounds on a sort of a choice base. And like for me, another great example is these cordyceps mushrooms, right? Ophiocordyceps are specific to ants, and the spores, they can land on the ants, and the spores then start germinating and start eating the body of the ants, but they don't eat everything. They tap into the neurosystem of the ant, and then they somehow, so they're single cellular organisms that working together as a multicellular organism, but then they somehow tap into the neurosystem of this ant, which is an animal that moves, and they can force this ant to move wherever they want it to be, and it walks like a zombie. It's really crazy looking, and they like guide it all the way up, like above the colony, and then they make the ant hold on to a branch or like a leaf or something, and then it completely eats the whole body of the ant, and then it grows the mushroom from the head, and then all the spores drop on the rest of the colony, right? So that to me is really smart. How can like
that's
single cellular organisms know how to do that?
Yeah, what? That's so cool.
Zombie ants.
Yeah, that's
zombie
like
ants.
If you want to know how a zombie apocalypse is gonna happen, it's gonna be because somebody found out how to CRISPR that mushroom. Yeah, that fungi.
There's actually a video game.
Oh.
The Last of Us, the video game, is actually completely based on like cordyceps going to humans. Yeah.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's oh my gosh. That's definitely how it's going to happen. Yeah.
It's the T virus, except it's cordyceps.
Yeah.
It's a different cordyceps. Yeah. It's a different cordyceps than we humans like to eat. But also we're lucky that we have a hot core temperature. Mushrooms do not like this core temperature of like, I think our core temperature is like 38 degrees Celsius in a core, and like mushrooms do not like growing at this heat. Specifically, there's some spores and some fungus that you can have in your lungs, but that's basically it. There's even a species of bats that gets this white rot fungus when they are in hibernation, but then if they wake up, their core temperature rises and the fungus goes away.
Wow.
So we as mammals are pretty lucky.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Otherwise, fungi are just going to take over. Another thing I read from if you guys are curious, I get every Monday I get a new news article from Fungi Academy that Jasper, we mentioned, was a part of. And one of the articles that I found really interesting is Chernobyl. There, as you guys know, giant nuclear explosion essentially, and has been radiating really bad shit for years and years and years, and the government has tried to cover it up, and to no avail. You pretty much have to evacuate the area, otherwise you're going to get cancer and all kinds of horrible diseases. And it to this day is still like the half-life. I don't remember the half-life of the radiation, but it's like still kind of emanating this toxic shit, which they just found out there's a mushroom, a fungi that's been growing, that's been kind of eating away at this radiation, which is insane. It's like, how can something with no brain, something that's perceived as like dumb or not smart because it doesn't have a brain or consciousness, be capable of something so crazy strong, yet could kill people like us, like you and me, and it's fungi.
It's ridiculous, right? So they're so adaptable, and there's even like, so this fungus is actually only surviving on the food of this radiation. It's not eating anything else. And that's the really crazy part about this. And there's even some fungi that they found in several places in the world. philosophy. Like I know that the second name is Mycosporae. It was found in the Amazon rainforest, and there's another mushroom that's found in like garbage dumps in Pakistan. But there's two species of fungi that I know of right now that are completely able to only survive on plastics. So when people talk about like, oh, we have a plastic issue, I know that fungi at one point will evolve to just completely eat plastic, and then we just have to get all the plastic out of everywhere and just make these massive garbage piles, inoculate them. So introduce these fungi that just eat this plastic, and then you see these massive mountains of plastic. You see them just shrinking. You know, that's the future.
Wow,
Do you
that
know
is
the species of mushroom that's doing that. Like,
so I know the second name of the mushroom. Like, look at this technology, Anita. It's called Microsporae. Like these long letter names. You know, as somebody from me without a scientific background, I need the technology to help me out.
I mean, that's what phones are for.
Yeah.
That's what Google's for.
Yeah, I know. I don't have to remember shit anymore. I just have to think and make.
Exactly.
That's your outer brain. Yeah, why would you waste
that's
your
the
PC?
That's the Elon Musk idea of evolution, is that we're all just a part of our phones now.
Oh, for sure. I call my hard drive second brain. That's all the stuff that I can't remember. So you also have an Aspergillus tuberculensis that does this, but that was not the one. Like, there's a lot of them. The different one. If you just like fungus eating plastics, you'll find many different.
That's so interesting.
But you can actually get a culture from this Mycosporae, which is the most famous one. It's still going to slow, but you can get a culture of this mushroom, and then you can start giving this mushroom plastic, and you can start training this mushroom. And this is why oyster mushrooms are really cool, because they're so like adaptable. And there's a lot of people that are training oyster mushrooms to just only survive on cigarette butts, for example. So like there's a whole company that like grows, it's just like collects cigarette butts, inoculates them with oyster mushroom. The mushrooms eat the cigarette butts, and then you can make like these ashtrays from them. Or it's really cool.
That's sick.
Here.
That's so cool.
Here's something even cooler. Megan, you have to promise me, okay? You're one of my best friends now. You have to promise me that you're going to bury me in a mycelium coffin.
All right. Honestly, that is that is exactly what I would. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not surprised. That's like the most Raquel thing I've ever heard in my life.
That's cool, because the guy that invented that, it was like, we went viral last week, but he's also a Dutch guy. So I was like a shout out. It's like, hey, you're a Dutch guy doing mushrooms. So yeah, it's really cool. Like he made it out of a reishi, but there's also this woman, I think somewhere in Washington, that made a suit that if you die, you get into the suit, and you actually like have mushroom, like a species of fungus that doesn't hold as nice a shape as the reishi does. So it's not a coffin, but it's a suit. And this mushroom is really good at decomposing the human body. So that's another option to go about it.
Yeah. I definitely want fruiting bodies to grow out of my gravesite.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
Then I know I went to a good purpose.
Yeah, I like the concept of like there's this sack that you can like get into this like soil, and then they bury you underground with like a tree sproutling on top of you, and then the tree, the roots start slowly engulfing your body, and then you just basically have a feeding a tree from your own body, and then there's like this memorial tree for as long as the tree lives.
I do think that's pretty cool.
Romantic and cool to me.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Speaking of trees and sneezing and pollen and stuff, so can you tell me anything about fungi and allergies?
Yeah. As somebody that struggles with pollen allergies sometimes, I have found a massive benefit from reishi mushroom, Ganoderma lucidum. And like I was talking a little bit about this reishi mushroom before, but there's a lot of these acids that only are found in this genus of Ganoderma, this shining skin mushrooms, that have actually been found to create antihistaminic effects. So when you have an allergy, it's basically your immune system being confused and overreacting to like whatever pollen that comes into your nose. And then you send all these white blood cells to wherever that is, and that creates inflammation, and that creates the itch. So it's basically your own body attacking yourself. But like what these like ganodermic acids can do, they can regulate your immune system. And again, like another biochemist, I have no clue how they actually regulate your immune system. But I've been told it in such a way that it is basically, if you're driving up and down the hill, like you have to, it's like sometimes give a lot of gas, and that's when you're being attacked. And then when you're going down the hill, you have to brake. But then these compounds create like a lot of, sort of like a cruise control for the car that is your immune system. So whenever you're like in a health position, you're not attacked as fast. And if when you're like your white blood cells do not like attack this pint so fast, you don't get allergic reactions. And when you're actually sick, they are working correctly. So like they call it immunomodulators, these compounds. And I'm very curious to learn more. But that's basically what I know about this. But there are some scientific studies that are backing up this idea of like, especially reishi being a really powerful immunomodulator.
Yeah. So kind of taking a step back into the world of psychedelics and dosing. So if you were to put like just an average Joe on some sort of like mushroom pill, like someone who has allergies, someone who's trying to cure their depression, maybe they have a little bit of neuropathy, like what mushrooms would you recommend? And how often would you dose? Like, how do you microdose? A lot of people want to know like how to put themselves on this like all natural remedy, medicinal routine.
So that's a fantastic question. And like how I really like how you said like how we perceive health in the West is like, oh, I feel bad, I take a pill and it's gone. But working with medicinal mushrooms, it is actually a process that takes longer. So you're building up your like these compounds in your system over longer periods of time. So you cannot just like, oh, I'm feeling sneezy, I'll take reishi today. It might help a little bit, but like from my experience and what I've noticed other people suggesting is that you should take these mushrooms over longer periods of time. And for me, like the more mushrooms, the better. I take lion's mane, I take reishi, I take turkey tail, I take cordyceps every day. And then if you really want to focus on something specifically, if you, for example, like have a lot of allergy and you want to have this antihistaminic effect, it might be better to take reishi 2 or 3 times a day. But for me, since like it's right now, I'm just in this strain of like prevention instead of necessarily curing. I just take 1 dose of all these mushrooms every day, and then I microdose either 5 days on and 2 days off, or 4 days on and 3 days off. But I think it's healthy for anything that changes your brain neurochemistry. Because like I feel like lion's mane doesn't alter it. When I drink coffee, my neurochemistry is definitely altered. When I drink a cacao, my neurochemistry is definitely altered, and I perceive that. So I think with those compounds, it might be good to give a rest. So like you go back to base, and then you actually like, I enjoy coffee more when I give myself a 3 or 4 day coffee break, and it's not as jittery and not as intense. But yeah, like I like if you're interested in this, there's like many different companies that either sell the supplements, but you can also just buy the mushrooms and experiment with making your own tinctures. And unfortunately, like reishi has a lot of this chitin, so you cannot eat it and get the compound. So you have to either do a water extraction, but a water extraction doesn't extract any of the acidic compounds. So you have to do an alcohol extraction, and that means letting it sit in alcohol that's at least, I say at least 70%, 80%. The higher the better, just for regulation. I use 90% alcohol. Just like extract all these acidic compounds from the mushroom, and then you combine that together with the water extraction, and then you have a so-called dual extraction.
Sorry, is that me?
I think it's somebody, the train or something. No, good.
Quick question before I shut my windows. Do mushrooms have to be fresh to take them, or can they be dried up, pill form? Can you buy them on Amazon?
Yeah, you can buy them on Amazon. Dried mushrooms are completely fine. I highly suggest not taking anything that is grown on rice. So don't have mushroom mycelium. I would not, like, if you're a big pulse damage fan like I myself, I wouldn't suggest taking any of the fungi perfecta things, because it's mycelium grown on rice, and it's impossible to extract the rice. So you're getting rice in your medicine. So there's a lot of companies that you can use. I highly suggest getting from either fresh kept mushrooms. Tony is awesome. And then there's also Mushroom Revival. They make really good products. Then there's Feral Fungi, which does, he's a mushroom alchemist. So he does really cool spagyrics, which is a really old alchemistic tradition for medicine making, which actually a triple extraction. So you burn the mushrooms until only the salt is left over, and then you mix that with a double extraction. But I also highly encourage you to find like a local mushroom cultivator, and like a lion's mane you can just buy fresh and dehydrate yourself. You can get grow kits if you want to experiment with growing yourself. And a grow kit is really easy. You just buy the grow kit. It's shipped to your door. There's instructions. The only thing you might have to do is spray water on it, and then you have mushrooms growing in your own house, which is super awesome. There's so many, like, if you want grow kits, I like cannot do anything else but shout out my homie Mike Tyson, MYC Tyson, best name in mushroom cultivation. But again, there's so many awesome local mushroom growing projects going on, and especially in the United States. So highly encourage anybody interested in knowing more about mushrooms to reaching out. It's like the mushroom community is really tight knit, and everybody's really, like, most people are really down to help people that have shown interest and want to learn more.
If you could also, I mean, I'm sure Jasper can provide us a list of his suppliers and everything that he's just listed off, but I could definitely give him a shout out on my Discord. And of course, you're welcome to also find his Instagram page where, you know, he links a lot of his buddies as well at Fungi Academy.
At Fungi Academy. If you're interested in the newsletter, it's called Mushroom Magic on Monday. It's fungiacademy.com/newsletter. And we do a weekly newsletter. The team here, we discuss psychedelic news. We feature somebody that's working with mushrooms. We go deep in one mushroom, how to cultivate it, how to find it every week. And sometimes we also have some mycelium news, like the coffin was this week's highlight. So if you're interested in mushrooms and want to know more, please subscribe. Yay!
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Everybody make sure you go check out Jasper everywhere. Jasper, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and talking to us.
Oh, you're so welcome.
About mushrooms.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
I have like so much more respect for fungi. What's the proper term for all mushrooms?
Fungi. There's many different there's many different ways of saying this, but fungi. That's the queendom, like some people call it. So that's the division.
All right, perfect.
But all mushrooms are in the subcategory of Dicaria.
All right, awesome.
No.
Good to know. Yeah. So again, if you guys want to follow the newsletter, fungiacademy.com/newsletter, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like that, just
that
go
easy.
to fungiacademy.com. Like I said, Jasper runs a really incredible, amazingly visual, very professional program called Fungi Academy. And it shows you how to cultivate not only just like pretty much all mushrooms. You could apply that knowledge to all mushrooms, but sacred mushrooms is their bigger topic, and how to cultivate that from your own home. And he has a bunch of list of suppliers on there as well. So if you don't know,
and if you're interested in the course, right now we're actually closed. We have finished the course now almost, and we're going through all the things and making it what we call course 2.0. So we're making it even better. I still cannot believe that's possible.
Awesome.
But if you want to know when it the next batch of like courses go out, you can also sign up. If you sign up for the newsletter, you also get the first notice when the courses open up again. And I'll make sure to do a nice discount code for everybody listening to the Hi There podcast.
Heck yeah.
So when the time comes, I'll let the girls know. And
perfect.
Yeah.
There you guys.
Awesome.
There you guys go. Keep an eye out. We'll make sure to give you that. We'll update you.
Yeah. Thanks again for being here. Anything else exciting happening on your end that you want to announce real quick, or?
So many exciting stuff. We're also doing the Psychedelic Journey Work course with Julian Vane. He wrote like Getting Higher, which is an amazing book on like getting the most out of your psychedelic experiences. So that's coming up after. We're doing weekly Instagram lives now as well with like super interesting people in the mycosphere, like we call it. We're also having our eyes set on doing a reishi and lion's mane cultivation course, which is coming up after. So this train is not stopping. So keep an eye out on the Instagram page and the newsletter, and you'll be up to date for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, let's go raid Classic Katie.
Thank
you guys so much for tuning in.
Yes, thank you, Jasper.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.